Dear viewers, welcome to our analysis in brief of News Hour. Today we will discuss the recent oil price hike, the price rises on the Middle East tension. Mr. Nehad Ismail, an economic and energy affairs specialist who worked for more than 15 years in oil sector, is joining us from London to discuss this issue. As a Middle East specialist and oil gas analyst, Mr. Nehad is writing articles on oil, gas, energy issues, particularly in the Middle East Gulf region, in various news media, including Al Jazeera Arabic, Al-Quds, the Huffington Post, NewsHour, and he is discussing the issue in many Arabic and international satellite TV channels. Hello, Mr. Nehad. Very welcome to our show.
Thank you for inviting me, and it's nice to be with you, Tariq. Thank you.
We are discussing about the recent oil price. The oil price rose recently towards almost $80 a barrel on rising Middle East tension. So do you think that the price is heading towards $100 or more per barrel? And how likely is this? Why is this happening all on a sudden?
As the coronavirus and the COVID-19 has now been contained with the mass vaccination and the easing of travel restrictions, economies are growing, the demand is increasing for oil and gas, so naturally the prices actually go up. Now, merchant investment banks like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, even Bank of America are predicting prices will rise to about $90 by the end of this year, even $100 or more the beginning of next year. Now, the fact is prices usually fluctuate according to demand, according to geopolitical situation. So whether they are right or wrong, we are not really sure. But we know something, that the market is tight, the supplies are tight. Therefore, with demand increasing, prices will head north. Whether they reach 100 or more, remains to be seen. But for sure, as demand grows, prices go up. Therefore, it's at one time, if somebody say prices will go up to $100 or more, we used to say, oh, this is an exaggeration or a hype. But now it is a realistic assumption to see that prices can go up to 100, even beyond. And of course, this will have an impact on the world economy. The World Bank would think it's going to slow down the economic growth. It will also derail any forecast about rising percentages of business activity and so on. Therefore, if we take China, for example, which is the biggest importer of oil, its economy will slow down, and the activities will slow down. And if you take India, for example, the Reserve Bank of India estimates that every $10 increase in prices will add $12.5 billion to the size of the trade deficit. So if the price goes up to $100 a barrel, you are adding $25 billion to the trade deficit of India. Also, the World Bank forecast that the economic growth in India in 2022 would be 8%. Now, if the prices keep going up, this forecast will not materialize, and India will achieve a much less economic growth. Therefore, it has an impact on the global economy. It would slow the economy, it would slow the growth, and if it goes well beyond $100 a barrel, it might even cause a global economic recession, which nobody wants. Now, we know that OPEC Plus, which is OPEC and its partners,
Yes.
Russia and other countries, they are applying a strict production policies which keep the market just enough to cover the world requirement, but it's not producing enough to create a surplus. Therefore, the possibility of prices going up to $100 is now stronger than a few months ago, because the prices now are at their highest level since November 2018. Therefore, I won't be surprised if we see $100 price, but it's not good for everyone. It's good for the producers. Saudi Arabia needs the money to fund
Do
its.
you think that the tension in Israel, Iran, these are contributing to the fact?
They contribute slightly because the market is used to these tensions. Any tensions that cause disruption of oil supplies will directly impact the prices. But these tensions in the region are actually now, they have been factored into the prices, and it doesn't play a critical role. The critical thing is that the Asian demand, if the Asian demand, i.e. China, India, Japan, South Korea, continues to rise, and if the supplies remain restricted, prices will definitely shoot up. And now, this is good for the exporting countries like Saudi Arabia, which need to fund its 2030 vision to diversify its economy, to reduce its dependence on oil. But it's not good for countries like America, for example.
I see. Okay.
Or India, as I said earlier.
So in the rising of a gasoline price and the challenges related to this, what are the options of President Joe Biden's administration? What can do to alleviate the problem?
Yes, before I go into the details of what options he has, let me just say the average American driver is now paying the highest level of prices for gasoline since 2014, the highest in 7 years.
Okay.
The American consumer in drivers and factories using oil and refineries, they blame President Biden's green policies because he has an ambitious green agenda to use clean energy sources like wind, the power of waves, and hydrogen and other alternatives that are not, they don't damage the atmosphere and the environment. That's his agenda. But he took some steps, actually, that alienated the American consumer. For example, he banned or at least suspended the leasing of federal lands for fracking and exploration of oil. He also canceled an important pipeline that is supposed to transport oil from Canada to the Gulf Coast, mainly the Keystone XL pipeline. This pipeline is going to be built in stages, and in the final stage, it will carry some 830,000 barrels of oil a day to the Gulf Coast, i.e. Texas and Louisiana. But this now has been canceled. So they blame Biden's own policies. Now, what he can do now, he has very limited options, but he can start with, for example, convincing the Saudis and the Russians to pump more oil into the market.
Yeah,
The trouble is, so
but the
far
OPEC
they
group
have
said, sir, the OPEC group said that it would stick with its original plan of gradually increasing the output by
Yes.
400,000 barrels a day each month.
a day for
Yeah.
a few months until
Yeah.
April. This is according to a pre-agreed arrangement.
Right.
If you recall, Tariq, let's go back to March, April 2020, the beginning of the corona epidemic.
Yes.
At that time, price, due to lack of demand and the collapse of the economies and the closure of all activity, prices collapsed to below $20 a barrel. At that time, President Trump put pressure on OPEC, mainly Saudi Arabia and their ally, Russia, to restrict the supply of oil, to reduce the production in order to protect the American shale oil producers, because many of them went bankrupt. Many of them went to the wall with huge debts. So they cut the production by 9.7 million barrels a day. That's OPEC plus, the OPEC countries plus their partners.
Yeah.
Now, that has worked. Prices increased by 65% since the beginning of this year. So it has actually produced the results. But now, as the market is improving, as demand is picking up, OPEC Plus decided to release an extra 400,000 barrels per day every month for several months. Latest information is they will carry on with this until April. President Biden said that is not enough. These policies restricting the supply are endangering the global economy and putting pressure on American gasoline prices. Now, OPEC, what can OPEC do now to respond to Biden? If I was advising OPEC, I would probably increase the 400,000 barrels a day each month until April, maybe up to 600,000 barrels a day. If they try to do more, like releasing an extra million or 2 million barrels a day, prices would collapse. And the American producers of oil in Texas and North Dakota and Oklahoma will actually start losing money. So it's a very delicate situation. The price of fuel, I recognize that the fuel prices are politically sensitive in America. The American driver doesn't like to pay more than $3 a gallon. Now the average price in America is $3.71, and in places like California, it's $4.50. But what he can also do, he can encourage the shale oil producers in America itself to increase production. He can also release or authorize the release of stocks from the SPR, which is the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which now reached around 615 million barrels. He can release 30 or 60. It will ease the pressure on the market. It will give a signal to OPEC that you must, OPEC and its allies, to do something about it. But his options are really limited. Whether this will work, we do not. So it remains to be seen what happens.
So,
and the consumer ultimately is paying the price.
Okay. So what are the impacts? I would like to know the impacts in USA, the Middle East, and the developing worlds.
Now, on the producers are now covering their budgets.
Mhm.
They are plugging the gaps in their accounts. They are doing well. The producers, when I say producers, I mean Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, and all the Arab countries that produce and export oil, Iraq as well. But we know we have problems in Libya, we have problems in Nigeria and in Venezuela and Angola, and all are OPEC members, and they have technical problems. Russia is doing very well. It has increased its revenue and it needs it as well. So
Right.
the impact on the producers, the exporters is positive, is good. But is it long term? This we don't know. Now, the impact on the importers, as I mentioned, the case of India and China, of course, they will suffer. Their import bill will go up, which means slower economic growth. And it might be also mean reduction in demand. They might try to restrict demand or go to gas or carry on using coal as an alternative. Therefore, it has an impact on the economy. The margin of the refineries that refine the oil also will come down if the prices keep going up. So it will impact the consumer, the manufacturer, it increase the price of material, transportation cost, and it will add to the deficit of the importing countries. And the developing countries and the poor countries will suffer the most, of course, because oil is expensive for them even when it is $50. So you can imagine the impact when it is double. The big problem, Tariq, the biggest problem we have now, these big increases in energy prices coincided with the disruption of supply chains around the world, which made material expensive and food expensive. And some people in some countries, they are not finding the materials they want because of these supply chain bottlenecks. Also, it coincided with the gas crisis in Europe. The prices increased fourfold, 400% due to some Russian tactics.
So
to do with
what is the solution? How the situation going to be normal?
Solution is the world economy to grow, the richer countries to help the poor countries, the oil producers increase the amount of oil they produce by a certain amount, because if they increase too much, we'll have a collapse in the prices, and that's bad for all the producers. Now, with the shift to the what you call the clean renewable energy, now the producers are spending a lot of money on research to reduce pollution in the air. For example, I know Aramco, the Saudi Arabian major, the biggest oil producer, is now investing in technology to capture the CO2, to reduce methane in the air, and to manufacture hydrogen as an alternative. So there are things happening now. And with the COP26, which is the climate change conference being held in Glasgow in Britain, that put extra emphasis on the fact that oil and gas are not good in the very long term. We shall need gas and oil maybe for the next 30, 40 years. After that, a clean energy must be the predominant source of energy to the world economy. There is no instant solution. There are only gradual solutions. And we need cooperative attitudes from everyone. You need collaboration, you need more research and more funding for reducing the pollution in the air, because if temperatures rise above 2% in 40, 50 years' time, the whole world is in peril, and the whole world economy is in danger. So it's a very sensitive subject, very important. It needs hours of discussion, and there is no room or time for it to be discussed in this session.
Yes.
Thanks a lot for
Okay.
giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much for joining us. We will see you in another episode. Visit newshour.media and join our social networks. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Tariq. Thank you.